are talking Paranormal Prison. This one directed by Brian Jager, who also co-wrote this movie. And this is a found footage movie that takes the story of this group of amateur kind of ghost hunters, and they are doing some type of YouTube channel and they want to get a big hit. So they decide to visit this old, dilapidated, abandoned prison that is due to be demolished. And they have the authority to film there overnight, and there's, you know, legends about certain prisoners that are there. And they are met there by a guard who kind of shows them around and, you know, is with them for pretty much the whole film. And as you'd probably expect, they are visited by a number of different entities, and there may well be some type of conspiracy and mystery that they may well be embroiled in as well. What'll happen? Well, you're going to have to watch the movie to find out. So let's talk about, first of all, what works with Paranormal Prison. Okay, so this might be a small thing, but I appreciate it. A lot of these kind of films where they have their setup where these people are going into some type of abandoned building, they're always on their own. They're always kind of like, they're never accompanied by a person of authority. I actually quite like the fact that in this instance there is someone with them the whole time, because I can't imagine that people who take care of these properties are just going to allow a bunch of strangers to run around their property and you know, do whatever they want without kind of being accompanied. So I actually kind of appreciated that there was someone from the prison with them the whole time in this movie. That might seem a small thing, but it's something that's always kind of bugged me in these sort of style, you know, found footage movies. What else? I think the actual prison setting where they're actually filming this, the location shooting here, really does lend itself to some creepy moments and some, you know, some pretty decent kind of like shot composition and things like this. Obviously, you know, it looks like we are filming in a real prison, and it obviously adds that element of authenticity to a certain degree. The actual end of this, it's quite a short movie, to be honest. The end of this movie, I feel, finishes relatively strong. I mean, the last kind of 10 minutes or so is where the real action kind of takes place. And there is, although it's done in a very kind of low-tech way, I think it does seem quite effective in what they actually do. And I think that, you know, there are some creepy moments to be had from that. However, I got to say, I think this movie doesn't really get the most amount of scare that it could have done in such a kind of oppressive environment, you know, an abandoned prison which is all kind of run down. It never really seems quite as scary as it could have done. Now, part of that, I think, is just the way that this movie is filmed, but also it kind of has these elements that took me out of it. Number one, they have music playing in a found footage film. So we have like a soundtrack. And that, to me, you never really buy into it as a found footage movie when that's the case. And I know it's meant to accentuate the drama in certain scenes. And obviously in a standard kind of movie where it's filmed, that does that. But in a found footage film, it doesn't really make sense in context of the film to a certain degree. Now, ultimately, I don't want to give away, but there is maybe a reason why there is the music. This doesn't quite go the way normal found footage films end up, I would say, but nonetheless, it didn't work in the context of the film. I don't think, anyway. The second thing, and probably the most important to me, the acting here is subpar. Now, I think found footage movies probably lend itself the best to do easy acting, because you can get away with people kind of looking at the camera and stuff like that. But I have to say, pretty much everyone really doesn't seem like they're acting in a natural way. They kind of seem very kind of forced and over the top, certainly at the beginning of the movie, there's a hell of a lot of exposition kind of crammed in very unnatural sounding moments of dialogue. So, what cameras have we got? Oh, look, we've got this, that, and the, you know, it's all kind of like it's just set up exposition that they have to kind of tell us as the audience. But it doesn't feel like that's what people would really speak like in these kind of situations. And I've got to say, I think most of the actors here were on the poorer side, which kind of does pull back from some of the the believability, so to speak, and the kind of the authenticity, maybe that this kind of environment sets up. I think as well they've tried to kind of like add in a few sort of CGI video effects, and they don't work. I mean, when we have our climax, they actually don't do that. They do something else. But throughout the movie, there's little kind of like moments here and there where you will see something which is clearly a video effect, and it almost would have been better not to have that at all in a way, because it just looks like a video effect. You know, I don't know. In a found footage movie, it stands out so much more, I think. The plot isn't exactly anything to write home about, but I did appreciate them having a little bit of a kind of a twist here. But the characters are just so the characters are just so unbelievable, and you know, and to be honest with you, quite unlikable. So this is really somewhat of a below average found footage movie. There are elements of this movie that I thought kind of worked to a certain degree, obviously given low budget constraints and stuff. So I won't say this is a completely awful movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a substandard one in some ways. So I'll give this one a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What do you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.